And it's just basketball. At the end of the day, it's just basketball.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe on the way in the door, my people. I hope you all are having a truly fantastic day today. Welcome back to Fanboy Fridays. Fanboys, we hope your day is going absolutely terrible. So today we're going to talk about Marcellus Wiley. Marcellus Wiley is someone who he seems like a nice guy, and he often has some pretty good takes on various topics. However, when it comes to the modern NBA, he is one of those people who seems to want to ignore the obvious and take the stance of kind of, well, that's just how today is. I don't want to criticize these modern players because that's just how today is. So we're going to listen to him talking. Of course, this is all stemming from the All-Star weekend, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody's giving their opinion and take. And so we're going to listen to Marcellus Wiley and talk about what he says. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Up, baby. You and I. Yep. Just like Rick James said, you and I, human beings are wired to do the least to get the most. Oh, we are wired to do the least to get the most. And that's why they call it conditioning. When you're properly raised, when you're properly trained, when you're properly reared, what do they say? You've been mentally conditioned. You've been wired properly.
So let's start right there. So he starts out by saying human beings are wired to do the least to get the most. And I don't disagree with what he's saying. However, I think everything is it's about the context in which you're talking about. Human beings are wired to do the least while getting the most. But however, when that comes to work, that doesn't mean that you can't complete the job. That doesn't mean that you can't complete the job. See, there are many ways to think about doing the least to get the most. To me, if you think about Michael Jordan and his way of scoring is very efficient. And we're not even talking about field goal percentage. We are talking about the actual ways in which he used to score, which was a lot of times 1-2 dribble pull-ups. That's efficient. That's doing the least to get the most. That's using the least amount of movement to get the job done. But at the end of the day, it is about getting the job done. So just to say, human beings are wired to do the least to get the most, but you still have to get the job done. Because what these players are trying to do is not get the job done while making more money than ever. They're trying to find a way to scam the job. That's different. That's different than finding a way to get the job done with the least amount of energy while still accomplishing the job. Anyway, let's continue.
Been properly raised. Those work ethics that are necessary for success have been instilled in you. So, we're looking at the NBA All-Stars, and we know these guys are in tremendous shape, tremendous conditioning, because they are All-Stars. Not one of them is a scrub.
That doesn't mean anything.
But what conditioning has occurred to where they get into a competitive format, a competitive game, a game of competition, let me say it that way for you, and they don't want to compete. That conditioning came from somewhere, right? There are no lazy kids, just lazy parents. So something is not being enforced and instilled to this generation of NBA players. Let's go back. Let's go back to when we now look at with folklore of yesteryear and say how the NBA used to play hard in an All-Star game, which we all know in the bottom of our heart, the depths of our soul, in our stomach, we can feel that's a damn lie. Them dudes didn't go hard the whole damn 48 minutes of that NBA All-Stars in the 80s or 90s. No, they didn't. But they went harder. Let's be real. 2000s, early 2000s.
Okay, so he says they didn't go harder. He says they didn't go hard in the 80s and 90s, but they went harder. So first of all, again, like let's break this down and understand that there is a level of acceptance. There is a level of play that is acceptable. The All-Star game should be entertaining. So whatever level you have to go to make it entertaining, then that is the level that is sufficient. So nobody has ever claimed that All-Star games were as competitive as regular season games or playoffs or whatever. No one has ever claimed that. We have simply said that, yes, they go harder, which he said at the end of all that. At the end of trying to make it seem like it's over-exaggerated, he admitted that, yes, they go harder. And that is the whole point. Like I said, it is not about saying that they went as hard in the All-Star game in the 80s and 90s as they did in the regular season. It's saying that they went hard enough to make the game entertaining. It was acceptable to the fans. It was exciting to the fans. But also, let's not diminish how hard they actually went, because again, everybody tries to make it seem like it's just in the fourth quarter. The whole game they were playing harder than these modern NBA All-Stars. For the whole game. Like, just simply go back and pick any All-Star game out of the 90s or 80s, and you will see that they are playing harder the whole game than what these players play today. Again, to me, it's very simple. It's, are you a competitor or are you not? But anyway, we'll get more back into that. Let's continue.
They did not go hard, but they went harder. Why did they go harder? Well, they had to go harder. What I tell you about human beings, we're going to do the least to get the most. So they had to go harder in attempt to build up not only the NBA's brand, but their individual brands. It was a showcase. When we only had 3 networks, when they were on tape delay, whatever you want to say, this was our time to shine.
So this is confusing to me that he says this. The All-Star game is still your time to shine. It is still the time where you are surrounded by the so-called best players in the league, and a time for you to separate yourself from these so-called best players in the league. So I'm really not understanding him saying, why did they go harder? Because they had to. No, they went harder because they were competitors. Yeah, like I said, if you're a competitor, no one has to coerce you to compete. If you're a competitor, no one has to bribe you to compete. That is just innate in you. That is what you want to do when you see someone who is challenging your position. But again, part of it is this whole buddy-buddiness, this political correctness, which I would argue is part of why Marcellus Wiley has the stance that he does with this modern NBA. It's like the not wanting to seem like he's being the bad guy by criticizing these players and just telling them like it is. Like, the reason they don't compete is because they are not the same level of competitor. It's really that simple. Let's continue.
Well, that time now is 24/7. If you're in this social media age with these new modern athletes who are getting paid before they even get to the NBA. You heard me? So these guys have a different conditioning because they have different conditions.
All right, so let's so here's my argument to that. Does that make it okay though? Does that make it okay to say they have different conditioning because they have different conditions? Does that make it okay? It's the same. It's the same logic of saying because a person is born in a certain area of town that they become a drug dealer. It's like, yeah, that may be the reasoning, but does that make it okay? Again, we're talking about sports in which the fundamental aspect of sports should be competition and competing. So just because they were born in certain conditions to where they don't want to compete, should that be accepted? That's the difference. Let's continue.
Now, parents out there, affluent parents out there, parents that have done their job, parents that are doing good, middle class, you got enough money to take care of the kids, take care of the roof over your home, over your head, and you still got some Chuck E. Cheese money, right? You parents, I'm talking to y'all. Guess what you have done? You have carried the water. Maybe you guys came from affluence. Maybe you didn't. Point is, you're carrying that water, and your goal is to pour some of that water out, so when you give it to your itty bitties, they ain't got to carry as much. Today's generation of athletes realize that. They picked up the pail, and they say, this ain't that heavy. And they realize they're going to make smarter choices, not harder choices. And one of them is, hey, I have to protect my business, which is my body, which is my mind, which is my spirit, which is me as a being, and I'm not going to waste it for you.
All right. Now, so let's start with the whole parent analogy he used, basically saying that parents try to set it up so that their kids don't have it as hard. And this is true. But again, to that, I would have to say a couple of things. First of all, that does not protect your kid from the consequences of their actions because they didn't have it as hard. In other words, if your parents were part of a job, let's say construction, and they had to do construction under a certain amount of standards, and was making a certain amount of money, and then the kid comes along, he gets into construction, and now he's making infinitely more money, but he's not doing as good a job as the parents. Well, the kid doesn't get excused from not doing as good a job because his parents set it up so that he didn't have to work as hard. The kid is still going to have to endure that scrutiny from the people who are in that profession or the people who are using the services of that profession. The kid's still going to get scrutinized. So just because you set it up that way, in other words, it's going back to the same thing of saying that just because these are the conditions doesn't mean that it's going to be accepted and that it should be accepted. And then so he talks about, protecting my brand, and I'm basically saying I'm not going to hurt myself for you. And by for you, I'm taking that as anybody, for the league, for the fans, nobody, blah, blah, blah. And again, to me, this is when you think about Michael Jordan and you think about how much money players were making back in the day. Probably a lot of them were making six figures, maybe during the 80s. Think by the early 90s, a lot of players may have been making, between $1 million and $3 million. I think Michael Jordan made like $3 to $4 million a year for most of his career, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody knows what that is, drop it in the comments. But the thing is that, whatever amount of money that was still plenty of money for that era and time. So the thing is like, and I'm sure today's players make a lot more money, even for the time they're living in. But again, like I said, players back then, they were making a lot of money for the time to play basketball. But again, the thing is, they could have been like, hey, well, I'm making plenty of money now. I'm making more than most people in America, so I'm just going to rest on my laurels. But that wasn't the case. Again, because it wasn't about the money, it was about the fact that you are a competitor. It is about the fact that this is why you play basketball. And basically, to me, what I hear Marcellus Wiley saying is, now it isn't about the competition. It isn't about these things. It is about the money. And this is the problem. This is the problem with everything. This is the problem with sports, music, movies. Everything is about the money and lacks substance. And to just say that, hey, these are the times we living in, so we just need to accept it. No. If there are people who don't accept it, that's how the longer these things will last. It takes people to push back and say that, hey, these things are not acceptable. And we want a quality product. Let's continue.
Matter of fact, you're going to pay me and pay me top dollar in value of what's earned based on who I am and what I produce. So the NBA All-Star Game ain't nothing but a reflection of the mindset of this generation getting different conditions. Ain't got to build up no NBA brand, ain't got to build up no individual brands, because that gets built by balling. And it doesn't get built once a year on an all-star stage. It gets built when you put in that work. And one thing I don't like about us talking about this generation is that they don't work. Oh, they work. They just work smarter. Granddaddy had to go up the hill both ways. Daddy had to go up the hill and was mad at it. Me, I know where the hill is. I'm going to still go up there, but I might have a different way of getting there. You know? A little different. And people get mad at that because you're not the hare in the tortoise in the hare. You're not. Is that the best way to train? Is that the best way to be conditioned? Is that the best way to get there?
All right, so let's stop here. So first of all, again, Marcellus Wiley keeps trying to equate them to working smarter. Well, first of all, there seems to be just as many, if not more, injuries with these players. So working smarter, I don't know about that. And to top it off, again, we're talking about completing the job. This is not just about the All-Star game. So, but if you want to talk about the All-Star game, as an NBA player, participating in the All-Star game is part of the deal. If you are selected to be an All-Star, this is part of the deal. So I'm really confused when people try to pretend like the All-Star weekend is just supposed to be some break for the NBA players. Throughout the history of the game, if you are an All-Star, you are expected to play to a certain level in the All-Star game, and the problem is the All-Star game has become unwatchable but the reality is this is a reflection of everything in the NBA. The All-Star game is just the most extreme part. But if you look at the finals aren't intense as they used to be. Nobody who is actually objectively watching it can say, oh, well, these players are just smarter in the finals. They're just smarter. No, the finals aren't as intense as they used to be. The playoffs aren't as intense as they used to be. And the regular season aren't as intense as it used to be. And for them for the last, decade or so, to be constantly talking about how to make these players compete more, from the instatement of the play-in tournament and of the in-season tournament, and now this ridiculous tournament and the All-Star, there is a reason that there are talks about how to motivate these players, and to say that they're just smarter, that's absent of some logic to me. To say that they're just smarter is like, because you found a way to cheat the system, that's smarter. Again, to me, it's smarter is getting more efficient at your job, not figuring out how to not do your job. Again, smarter was Michael Jordan saying, I'm going to use as least motion as possible to score these points. To score out of the triple threat, to score 1 dribble pull up, 2 dribble pull up. That's smarter, saying, I'm going to use as least amount of energy to score points. Smarter is not saying, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to just not play defense and just conserve all my energy for offense. That's not smarter. That's not playing half of the game. Anyway, let's continue.
I'll get there. Just gonna look different. That's why the tortoise could beat the hare. How the hell does that happen? I thought you were jogging.
Because it's a fairy tale.
Thought you weren't moving. Oh, contraire, mon frere. So, I am not mad at this generation because the next generation, if y'all mad at this one, oh, wait till you see what's coming next. These kids know.
And again, just because the next generation may be worse, that means it should be accepted. That's the question. Should it be accepted?
That they got options. And one of the options is, I don't have to go out to the All-Star game and do all that. But the NBA is trying to sell that. They're trying to sell yesterday, today. They're trying to sell newspapers to us, y'all. When we know that damn well, even Kobe and Jordan and them didn't play hard to the fourth quarter. And that's when they had to, with the contracts back then. We talked about this on The Rocks, our other show. Jordan, peak powers, Michael Jordan was getting paid $30 million a year. And you clap at that. Matter of fact, give him something. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Loud. That's good. However, it was a 1-year deal. 1 year, 30. You know damn well he didn't want no 1 year, 30. You know he wanted that 10 years, 300. But they wasn't going to give you that. He had to go get it with his muscle. And since he did, he laid down the foundation for these kids who don't have to get it with only that physical muscle, their mental muscle as well.
Okay, we're going to stop. We're going to hold up right there. Yeah, because this whole mental muscle thing, again, what we're talking about is players who've learned to cheat the system. But going back to Michael Jordan, so I can't remember if it was I think Michael Jordan's last 2 years. Somebody drop it in the comments if you know exactly. I think his last 2 years he made $30 million, or roughly $30 million, and so that was a big jump from what he was making previously. Now, you know, according to the logic of the people who defend this modern era, it's like, oh, once Jordan jumped up to that 30 million, he should have just sit back in the cut. He should have just laid back and say, oh, I got these contracts now. I don't have to play as hard. But it wasn't about the money. Jordan wasn't playing hard for the money. Jordan was playing hard because he was a competitor. Jordan was playing hard because he wanted to win. He wanted championships. He was trying to complete a second three-peat. During the Jordan's last, the 98 championship, I think Jordan, I can't remember if it was a game or if it was maybe the final game in the finals, but I think Jordan scored like 50-something% of the team's points. So Jordan literally carried the load for the finals, while he was making more money than he had in his whole NBA career. Again, still willing to carry the load because Jordan was a competitor and wanted to win. And last, while we wrap this up, let me just go back to this. Jordan had the love of the game clause in his contract. From the very beginning, the love of the game clause in his contract saying that I can play basketball, basically saying I can go compete whenever and wherever I want. The NBA cannot stop me from doing that. So it wasn't about the money, because Jordan was going and playing pickup games at parks and other gyms and going back to North Carolina to play pickup games. It wasn't about the money. Jordan was a competitor, and Marcellus Wiley and all the people trying to defend this younger generation, you can say what you want. You can say that, oh, well, it's just the way it is. It's just the way they've been conditioned. Whatever it is, whatever the answer is, whatever you think of to make it okay, what you cannot deny is it is a lack of being the same kind of competitor. Now, you can say for whatever reason you want, but it is a lack of being the same kind of competitor that they used to be. And the question is, should it be accepted? If it's accepted by everyone, it's just going to get worse and worse. If it's not accepted, at some point, maybe there's hope for a turnaround. But to just say that, oh, well, you know, that's just the way it is. That's how these kids came up. They came up entitled. It's just the way it is. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What did you think about what Marcellus Wiley had to say about the All-Star game? Do you think that, hey, we should just accept, or first of all, do you think that it is just players being smarter? Again, because I would argue that the players are learning to scam the system. Being smarter is learning how to do your job more efficiently while getting the job done, not learning how to not do your job. That's not being smarter. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. You all have a truly fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. All right.